There is a yard in the neighborhood that people cannot stop looking at. It is not large. It is not pretty. The walls are peeling. The floor is packed dirt with a few broken tiles in one corner, and there are recycled tin cans hanging from a wire as if they were improvised planters, because that is exactly what they are. But that yard is full of green. Dark green, light green, wide leaves and thin leaves, short stems and branches climbing wherever they can, and at the center of it all, almost always, is Perez. Perez is not a professional gardener. He is the man on the corner, the one who sits in a plastic chair drinking coffee at 7 in the morning and greets everyone who passes by. The one who repairs old radios as a hobby and has 3 cats that are not his, but live in his house. The people in the neighborhood call him, with affection and a hint of mockery, the lazy gardener, because they never see him digging, never see him buying bags of soil at the nursery, never see him hauling tools. And yet, that yard produces more food than any garden in the neighborhood. The neighbors have spent years trying to understand how he does it. Some believe he has some trick with the water. Others think the soil on that plot is special. A woman from across the street even asked him whether he used some fertilizer that is hard to come by. Perez laughed. He told her no, that the secret was simpler than that it was not even really a secret, but something everyone knew how to do and stopped doing at some point without noticing. And one day, to show the whole neighborhood what he was talking about, Perez pulled out an old wooden crate, the kind that used to be used to store fruit at markets, and set it on the patio table. Inside were 14 things, 14 foods that any family has in their kitchen or in their vegetable drawer: green onion, potato, garlic, sweet potato, chayote, celery, romaine lettuce, onion, ginger, basil, leek, cabbage, carrot, and beet. All of them were sprouting. None had been planted in the traditional way. None came from a little seed bought in a packet. They were all there because Perez, at some point, had simply decided not to throw them away. That is exactly what we are going to explore today. Those 14 foods, one by one, with what part to use, how to do it, and how long it takes to see results. Because if there is one thing Perez understands better than anyone, it is that a lot of people have spent years throwing away food that was still alive. If you want to learn this along with us, this is a good moment to stay with us and not miss any of the 14. Before getting into the list, there is something important to understand. Because if I give you the 14 names right now and nothing else, you will probably think you already knew this, that you tried it once and it did not work, or that your space is too small for it to matter. And I do not want that to happen. So first, you need to understand why these foods can do what they do, and why for so long no one explained it to you this way. The thing is, these 14 foods have something in common that the seed industry would prefer you not notice. All of them store reserve energy in their roots, tubers, bulbs, or bases. That energy does not disappear when you cut them. It does not go away when you put them in the refrigerator. It does not run out when you leave them forgotten at the bottom of the vegetable drawer. That energy is there because biologically, the plant stored it for one single purpose: to grow again. Potatoes have eyes. That is what those small, dark marks are called, that appear when a potato has been stored for a while. Those eyes are growth buds. The potato produces them because it knows, at a biological level, that at some point it will need to sprout again. The sweet potato does the same. So does garlic. Each clove is actually a complete bulb with everything it needs to become a new plant. The base of the green onion, that white part that is normally thrown away, has active roots that start working again in contact with water within a matter of days. The chayote is perhaps the most dramatic of all. If you leave it in a damp, undisturbed corner, it sprouts on its own. Without water, without soil, without help, because it carries the seed inside, and the seed does not need permission to do what it knows how to do. It turns out this is not magic or coincidence. It is elementary biology that was taught in rural schools 50 years ago, and that at some point stopped being taught because it was no longer convenient to teach it. A customer who regrows their green onion from the base does not buy green onion. A cook who plants the eye of their potato does not buy potato seed. A family that learns to sprout garlic from a loose clove does not need a seed packet every season. It is not a conspiracy. It is a business model. The seed industry and the modern distribution chain need the knowledge about regrowing these foods to remain invisible. Not because it is difficult, but precisely because it is too easy. If it were complicated, hiding it would not matter so much. But it turns out that a glass of water and a green onion base produce visible results in 7 days. That is too simple for the commercial system to promote. We were led to believe that growing things requires preparation, tools, space, investment. That idea was sold to us for decades, and most of us accepted it without questioning it because it seemed reasonable. Perez questioned it by accident, one day when he did not want to throw away something that still had roots. And what he discovered in that small, cluttered yard is the same thing we're going to show today. If you are over 50, there's a very good chance you saw this working in some yard from your childhood without fully understanding why it worked. Today, you're going to understand it. And if you are younger, even better, because you still have time to avoid spending the next 20 years throwing away what was already ready to grow. There is one more thing I want you to know before getting into the 14. This does not require land. It does not require tools. It does not require knowing anything about plants. It requires a glass of water, a container with soil, a window with light, and the habit of looking at what you are about to throw away before you throw it away. That is all. Perez does it with tin cans hanging from a wire. If he can, anyone can. Now then, if you want to stop depending on the market to have these plants at home, in the description, there is a complete guide with all 14 foods detailed step by step with the exact timings, the recommended containers, and the most common mistakes that make it not work. Everything is there, and it is worth having it handy while you listen to this. Let's go through the 14. Perez was not always the neighborhood's gardener. There was a time when he was exactly like everyone else. He bought vegetables at the market, threw away the green onion bases, peeled the garlic and discarded the cloves that had gone a little soft, stored the potatoes until those long, twisted sprouts grew out of them, and then threw them away thinking they were no longer any good. He did all of that because it was what everyone did, because no one had told him there was another way. Or rather, because someone had told him, but he had not paid close enough attention at the right moment. That someone was his grandfather. Perez's grandfather had a small plot on the outskirts of a town that barely exists anymore. He was not a farmer by profession, he was a tailor, but he had that plot, and he worked it with a logic that took Perez decades to fully understand. The logic was simple. Nothing that is still alive gets thrown away. Not as a philosophy, not as a moral principle, as a concrete, everyday, almost mechanical practice. If something had roots, it went into soil or water. If something had eyes, it got buried. If something had a base with even a thread of white, it went in a glass. The grandfather did not explain much, he just did it. Perez remembers, with that kind of sharpness that childhood memories have when they involve the senses, the smell of his grandfather's yard. It was a damp, green smell, a mix of turned earth and fresh leaves, with something of garlic always floating underneath. He also remembers his grandfather's hands, large and slow, carefully settling an onion base into a clay pot, and he remembers that in that yard, nothing was ever missing. In times when the market was far away, or money was just enough, the yard always had something. There was always green onion. There was always something green for the pot. But Perez was a child, and children do not write down what they see. They absorb it, store it somewhere they cannot name, and keep on playing. The years passed. The grandfather died. Perez moved to the city, had his life, his job, his small kitchen with a refrigerator and a market nearby. And for a long time he did not think about his grandfather's yard. Until one day, he must have been in his mid-50s. He found at the bottom of a cardboard box an old notebook with black oilcloth covers. It was his grandfather's. Inside, there were no recipes or elaborate instructions. There were short notes in tight handwriting with no capital letters, as if they were reminders to himself. Loose phrases that said things like, "The green onion comes back, don't throw away. The potato with an eye is not wasted. The chayote alone knows what it has to do. The soft garlic still works, bury it." Perez read that notebook 3 times in a row, and then he went to his kitchen, opened the vegetable drawer, and looked at everything in it with completely different eyes. There was a green onion base with tiny roots. There were 2 potatoes with long eyes he was about to throw away. There was a garlic clove that had separated from the head and had dried out a little. There was half a forgotten onion with its base intact. All of that, which at any other moment would have gone straight into the trash, was suddenly something else. It was material. It was a starting point. That was more than 15 years ago. Since then, Perez has not bought green onion. He has not bought garlic more than 3 times a year when he needs a large amount for cooking, not for growing. He has sweet potato sprouting in a 5-liter bucket in the corner of the yard that gets afternoon sun. He has lettuce regrowing from the base in a tomato tin hanging next to the kitchen window. He has a chayote that sprouted on its own, just as the grandfather would have predicted, and that now climbs the back wall with an energy that sometimes seems out of proportion to the space it occupies. What the grandfather knew was not a secret in the sense of something deliberately hidden. It was simply common knowledge that circulated among people who lived close to the land. Knowledge passed down through observation, not formal teaching. Knowledge that had no owner, no brand, no price. And perhaps that is why, when the time came that it was convenient to put a price on seeds, that knowledge was pushed to the margins. It was not erased overnight. They simply stopped repeating it, stopped including it, stopped telling people that the green onion base they are about to throw away can grow back in a week. And here is what is interesting, because the information did not disappear from the world. It is in the yards of the grandparents who remain. It is in notebooks with black oilcloth covers at the bottom of cardboard boxes. It is in the memory of people over 70 who still do these things out of habit without thinking much about it, because that is how they learned it, and they never had a reason to change. Thousands of people over 50 are already returning to these practices, not because they took a course or read a technical book, but because at some point, like Perez, they looked at what they were about to throw away and thought, wait, this still has roots, and they decided to see what would happen. You want to know what is curious? Most of them say the same thing afterward. They say they cannot believe it took them so long, that it is too easy for the number of years they went without doing it, that they feel something strange, a mix of satisfaction and a mild irritation when they see something grow that was headed for the trash. That is exactly what Perez felt the first time the green onion he put in a glass of water had new green leaves again after 7 days. That lemon tree, that green onion, that lettuce that grew from the cut base do not need you to explain anything to them. They already know what they have to do. What they need is for you to stop throwing them away before they can prove it to you. Stay, because in the part that follows, we are going to go through each of the 14 foods in Perez's crate one by one, and there are 2 on that list that will surprise you more than the others, not for what they produce, but for how ridiculously simple it is to get started. 14 foods. 14 starting points you probably already have at home. We go from 14 to 1, from the most familiar to the most surprising. Each one with what part to use, how to do it, and how long it takes to respond. Number 14. Beet. The part almost everyone throws away is precisely the most useful. The crown, that upper section where the leaves grow from. If you cut the beet and leave 2 centimeters of the top, you have enough to regrow. Place it in a shallow dish of water, just so the cut touches the water without being fully submerged, and in about 8 to 12 days, new leaves will emerge from the center. You are not going to get another whole beet. That needs to be said honestly, but you will get fresh beet greens that are edible, nutritious, and that many people do not even know can be used in cooking. A flat container, clean water, some light. That is all. Number 13. Carrot. Same as the beet. What works is the crown. The upper end of the carrot, that little piece that normally goes straight into the trash along with the leaves, has active buds. Cut it off with 1 centimeter of carrot and place it in shallow water. Within a week, new leaves start to appear. They are carrot leaves, slightly bitter, used in salads or as a fresh herb in stews. The modern distribution system will never offer you this because there is no way to bag it and sell it. But it is there, in that piece you are throwing away, waiting for you to notice. Number 12. Cabbage. The base of the cabbage, that hard knob that is left when you finish separating the leaves, is an active regeneration point. Place it in a shallow dish of water, cut side down, and in 10 to 14 days, new leaves will sprout from the center. A full head of cabbage will not grow, but tender leaves will, which work for salad or cooked dishes. The same works with broccoli and cauliflower if you leave the base intact. Perez has 3 cabbage bases in different stages of regeneration in a tray beside the hallway window. He says it became an automatic habit. Before throwing away any base, he puts it in water and sees what happens. Number 11. Leek. The leek has one of the fastest and most visible regrowths on the entire list. Cut the leek leaving the root and about 3 centimeters of the white stalk. Place it in a glass of water so the roots stay submerged. In 5 to 7 days, there is already visible growth. In 2 weeks, you have new leek ready to use. You can do this 3 or 4 times with the same base before it starts to lose vigor. The point is that every time you buy a leek, you are actually buying several leeks if you know what to do with what you normally throw away. Number 10. Basil. This one is especially interesting because it does not regrow from a root, but from a stem. If you have a fresh basil sprig with at least 2 leaf nodes, cut it just below a node and place it in water. In 7 to 10 days, white roots will appear from the submerged end. When the roots are 2 or 3 centimeters long, you can transfer it to soil. That is how you multiply a basil plant indefinitely without buying anything. The basil you buy at the market bundled with a rubber band already comes with stems that can do exactly this. The industry would prefer you not know, because it would mean you buy basil once and then never buy it again. Number 9. Ginger. Ginger works with a logic similar to the potato but slower. A piece of fresh ginger with at least 1 visible bud, that small, lighter-colored protrusion that appears at the ends or joints, can be planted directly in soil. Bury it about 3 centimeters deep in a pot with good drainage, in a spot with indirect light and consistent moisture. In 3 to 4 weeks, green shoots start to appear. In 8 to 10 months, you have a new ginger root ready to harvest. It is not fast, but it requires nothing special. And a piece of ginger you buy today can become several pieces next year if you simply plant it instead of using it all. Number 8. Onion. The onion has 2 possible paths. The first, if an onion starts sprouting in your drawer with that green stalk coming out of the center, do not throw it away. Cut it in half and plant the half with the root in soil or water. Before long, you have green onion growing from the inside. The second path, save the onion base when you cut it, that flat disc with roots. Place it in shallow water. It will regrow green shoots in a week. It does not produce a whole new onion, but it does give you a continuous supply of green onion for cooking. The supermarket onion is already sprouting much of the time without you noticing. That is not a defect. It is a signal. Number 7. Romaine lettuce. Lettuce is one of the most dramatic cases on the entire list because the response time is almost immediate. Cut the lettuce leaving the base, about 5 centimeters from the bottom. Place it in water with the cut side facing up. In 2 or 3 days, there is already visible movement in the center. In 8 to 12 days, you have new leaves you can harvest. The regrown lettuce will not be as large or as compact as the original, but it is fresh lettuce without pesticides, grown in your home, ready when you need it. Perez always has 2 or 3 lettuce bases in different glasses. He says that since he started doing this, he hasn't bought lettuce with the same frequency as before. Number 6. Celery. Celery and lettuce are cousins in this process. The base of the celery, that compact knob from which all the stalks grow, is a regeneration engine. Place it in shallow water, in a spot with good light. In 4 or 5 days, leaves start to appear from the center. In 2 weeks, you have new stalks ready to use. Regrown celery has a slightly more intense flavor than the original, more concentrated, almost more honest. And here is what struck me as remarkable when I discovered it. The celery sold at markets already comes with the base cut in a way that makes regeneration difficult. Not always, but many times the cut is too high, too far from the active node, as if someone knew exactly where to cut so that it would not work for this. Number 5. Chayote. Chayote deserves its own moment because it is the most autonomous on the entire list. It does not need you to do anything special. If you have a ripe chayote and you leave it in a corner with some moisture and a mild temperature, it sprouts on its own. The seed is inside the fruit, and when conditions are minimally favorable, it starts to germinate from the inside outward. In 3 to 4 weeks, you see the sprout emerging. Then you plant it, sprout facing up, in soil with good drainage. Chayote was a fundamental crop in Mesoamerica before industrial agriculture pushed it out of home gardens. A single well-placed plant can produce dozens of fruits a year. The distribution system would prefer you buy it at the market because growing it at home is too easy and too productive. Number 4. Sweet potato. The sweet potato has growth buds distributed across its entire surface, just like the potato, and when given the chance, it activates all of them at the same time. Cut the sweet potato in half and place 1/2 in water with the cut side facing down. In a week, multiple sprouts start to appear from different points. When the sprouts are about 10 centimeters long, you can carefully detach them and plant them individually in soil. Each sprout becomes a new plant. A single half of a sweet potato can generate 6, 8, 10 new plants, and each plant produces several sweet potatoes. The math on this is so favorable for the home grower and so unfavorable for the seed seller that there is nothing more to explain. Number 3. Garlic. A single garlic clove planted in soil produces a complete new head. That is what you need to know. 1 clove, an entire head. The process takes 4 to 6 months, but it does not require constant attention. Plant the clove with the tip facing up, about 3 centimeters deep, in loose soil with good drainage. Water moderately. Within a few weeks, green leaves appear. When the leaves start to dry out from the tip downward, the head is ready to harvest. From that head, you can set aside the best cloves to plant again. Perez has gone more than 8 years without buying garlic to grow. He buys it when he needs a large amount for cooking in season, but the planting cycle sustains him with what his own yard produces. Number 2. Potato. The potato has eyes. Those small, dark spots that appear on the surface when it has been stored for a while are active growth buds. A potato with 2 or 3 well-developed eyes can be cut into pieces, making sure each piece has at least 1 eye, and planted directly in soil or in a deep bucket of soil. In 2 or 3 weeks, green stems sprout. In 3 to 4 months, there are new potatoes ready to harvest. The most common mistake is throwing the potato away when it starts to sprout, thinking it is no longer good to eat. At that moment, it is exactly ready to plant. The sprout is the signal that the bud is active, not that the potato has gone bad. And we arrive at number 1. Number 1. Green onion. The first on the grandfather's list. The one that started everything for Perez. The one with the fastest, most visible, most immediate regrowth of the 14. The white base of the green onion, that part that gets cut off and thrown away without a second thought, has active roots. Place it in a glass of clean water so the roots stay submerged and the white part sits just above the water level. Put it somewhere with light. In 48 hours, there is already movement. In 7 days, you have new green leaves ready to cut. You can harvest and put it back in water. You can transfer it to soil whenever you like, and there it grows even faster. A single green onion base can produce for months. The green onion you buy bundled at the market already comes with several bases. Each one is a starting point. 7 days, a glass, clean water, natural light. That is all number one on the lazy gardener's list needs. Perez puts it in water on Monday, and the following Sunday, he has green onion for the pot. Just like his grandfather, just like it was always done, before someone decided it was better business to sell you what you can regrow yourself. If you want to have this complete list with the exact timings, the recommended containers, and the most common mistakes for each of the 14, it is all detailed in the description. It is the guide Perez would have liked to have the day he found his grandfather's notebook. So now you have the 14 names, but knowing the names is only half of it. The other half is what you do today, in the next 20 minutes, with what you already have in your kitchen. Perez has a habit he developed without much thought, almost by inertia after reading his grandfather's notebook. Before throwing away any vegetable scrap, he looks at it for a second, just 1 second, and he asks himself a simple question. Does this still have roots? Does it have eyes? Does it have a base? Does it have a node, a sprout, something that indicates there is still movement inside? If the answer is yes, it does not go in the trash. It goes in a glass, in a shallow dish of water, in a tin with soil. That habit, which takes less than 2 seconds for every vegetable that passes through his kitchen, is the difference between the empty yard he used to have and the yard full of green he has now. You do not need to start with all 14 at once. That would be overwhelming and probably none of them would end up working. Perez recommends starting with 3. 3 that you can manage, observe, and understand before adding more. And the 3 he recommends starting with are the fastest, the most visual, and the ones that best prove that this works before the initial motivation fades. The first to start with is green onion. The reason is simple. 7 days. In 7 days, you have a visible result. You do not have to wait months or long weeks. In a week, that base you were going to throw away has new green leaves. That is enough to change a habit, because the brain needs to see quick results to consolidate new behaviors. Look in your kitchen right now. If you have green onion, save the base. If you don't have any, the next time you buy some, save it. A glass, water up to cover the roots, a window, done. The second to start with is lettuce. The reason is also speed. 2 or 3 days to see the first movement in the center, 8 to 12 days to have new leaves, and the process is so visual, so clear, that it is hard not to keep doing it once you see it. The lettuce base in water is perhaps the most immediate experiment on the entire list, the one that most quickly turns a skeptic into a believer. The third to start with is garlic. Not because it is fast, because it is not, but because it best illustrates the logic of the entire system. 1 clove, an entire head, 4 to 6 months of waiting, but 0 daily attention. You plant it and leave it alone. You do not need to water it often. You do not need to monitor it. You do not need to do anything special. It grows on its own. And when you harvest it months later and see a complete head coming out of the soil from a single clove you were going to throw away, something changes in the way you look at the rest of the foods on the list. Now, there are common mistakes that make this not work, which Perez learned at the time through failed attempts. The first is using too much water. More water is not better. For bases that are regrowing, the water should cover only the roots or the cut part, not submerge the whole piece. When it is submerged too much, it rots before it can sprout. The second mistake is placing them somewhere without light. They do not need intense direct sun, but they do need natural light. A dark corner does not work. A window without direct sun but with daylight works perfectly. The third mistake is not changing the water. Stagnant water promotes mold and stops regeneration. Changing it every 2 days is enough. What happens is that most failures with this method are not failures of the method. They are failures of conditions. The plant wants to grow. It is biologically programmed to do so. The only thing that can stop it is the conditions being wrong, and the right conditions are so simple that when someone fails, it is almost always because of excess, of doing too much, of adding something that was not needed, not from doing too little. Perez says that the secret of the lazy gardener is not real laziness, it is trust. Trust that the plant knows what it has to do if you give it the minimum it needs to do it. The grandfather knew this because he had observed it enough times. He had seen the chayote sprout on its own in the corner. He had seen the garlic multiply without anyone giving it special attention. He had seen the green onion grow back after cutting it so many times he had lost count. And from that accumulated observation, he had drawn a conclusion that he wrote in tight handwriting in a notebook with black oilcloth covers. These plants do not need you to help them too much. They need you to let them do what they already know how to do. And if you want to keep going deeper into this, in the description there is the complete guide with all 14 foods, the exact timings for each one, the most suitable containers for each method, and the specific mistakes to avoid in each case. It is the kind of information you will not find compiled anywhere else because no one has a commercial interest in putting it together. It is there for anyone who wants to have it on hand. There is a question that Perez sometimes asks the neighbors who stop in front of his yard to ask him how he does it. He does not ask it to provoke or to lecture. He asks it because he genuinely thinks it is the most important question in the whole matter. The question is this: how many years have you been throwing away food that was already ready to keep living? There is no right answer. Everyone does their own count, but almost everyone, when they do it, arrives at the same place. Too many. Too many years throwing away the green onion base. Too many years discarding the potato with eyes. Too many years cutting the soft garlic without planting it. Not out of bad intention or complete ignorance, but because at some point the habit of buying replaced the habit of regrowing, and no one stopped to point out the exact moment that happened. Perez's grandfather's notebook survived at the bottom of a cardboard box for decades. The notes are simple, almost telegraphic. The green onion comes back. The potato with an eye does not get thrown away. The chayote alone knows what it has to do. Phrases that do not need a long explanation because they describe something anyone can verify in their own kitchen in less than a week. That is exactly what Perez wants you to do, not to believe him, to verify it, to take a green onion base, put it in a glass of water, leave it on the windowsill, and come back in 7 days, so that when you see the new green leaves, you remember this moment and understand that what changed was not the plant. What changed was you, who stopped throwing it away before it could show you what it already knew how to do. Every person who starts doing this is a person who stopped depending on something they did not need to buy. It is not a revolution or a declaration. It is a glass of water and a green onion base on a windowsill. It is the first step of something that your grandfather or someone close to you's grandfather did without thinking because it was simply what was done. Maybe the only thing you were missing was to stop throwing away what was already alive. If you know someone who always throws away green onion bases or discards potatoes with eyes, share this. Not because they need to be convinced of anything complicated, but because in 7 days they can verify it themselves. And if you want us to keep bringing this kind of knowledge, staying with us is the simplest way not to miss what comes next.